Hello there. So this is strategic business analysis, and for this video our topic is about strategic planning. So we have here an article from Harvard Business Review. Article's title is Strategic Planning in Diversified Companies. Okay. So let's start reading this one. Although in the previous videos, we've discussed another definition of strategy, and then we've also had the differences between corporate strategy, business strategy, and then functional strategy. Okay, so the widely accepted theory of corporate strategic planning is simple. Using a time horizon of several years, top management reassesses its current strategy by looking for opportunities and threats in the environment, and by analyzing the company's resources to identify its strengths and weaknesses. There's actually maraming ways of doing that. But what really happens is, of course, syempre, yung pinakang invested sa business is yung top management. Most of the time, they are also the investors to the business, and sila syempre yung nag-labor during the beginnings. And then for the strategy, what normally happens, kasi nga strategy, it's for the survival, for growth, for stability of the business. So it's normally long-term in nature. So if we talk about time horizon, siguro mga 10 years, ganyan. Kasi yung, in a way, yung 10 years, pinakamatagal na siya, pero in a way, kaya mong i-foresee or kaya mong i-visualize kung ano yung mga gustong mangyari doon sa business during the time period. And of course, hindi naman siya yung pinapabayaan na long-term lang talaga. Normally, businesses also come up with short-term plans, and from year 1 to year 10, kumbaga, china-chop-chop, or in a way, for them to be able to achieve yung pinakang goal nila at the end of 10 years, they have to set up milestones. Like, after 1 year, ano yung dapat nang ma-achieve natin? After 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, hanggang, the final 10th year. And then, of course, normally, after mo namang ma-achieve yung 10 year na yun, it's either, iro-roll over mo siya, dun pa lang sa 5th year, extend mo na yung time horizon, or upon reaching the 10th year, saka ka magpanibagong another 10 years ulit. Okay? So, merong mga ganong style. And again, it would depend on the company naman. And then dito, may nabanggit yun dun sa article. Of course, it's a different case with regards to small businesses or small companies. Medyo informal yung strategic planning nila. Tapos, continuous process kasi almost everyone who are in the management, who are decision makers dun sa company, they can, get together and talk about the business and the operations. Tapos, normally during those, get-togethers, they talk about it, and they can already think of things that they want to happen in the near future. So, in a way, madaling pag-usapan, madaling baguhin kung ano yung mga strategies nila, madaling magdagdag, ganyan. And of course, it's also easy to monitor. That's why they can do that, right? So, that's why it's said here na continuous process siya kapag smaller companies normally, right? Pero kapag large, diversified corporations naman, syempre medyo, mas mahirap. Especially kung you are in different locations, yung kalat na kayo sa buong bansa, ganyan. Marami na kayong branches, marami na kayong stores, so medyo mahirap. So, in a way, kapag large corporations, normally they provide a written guidelines or written handbook na nasusundan ng bawat manager or decision maker pagdating dun sa kanilang strategic planning. Normally they probably do annual get-togethers or annual meeting, tapos siguro quarterly meeting, they do have one, mga presentations, updates on what's already happening dun sa mga pinagplanuhan nila, and whether they are achieving them, ano pa yung mga problems na encounter nila, how they are overcoming those, how are they countering the negative aspects, mga ganyan. Okay? So, ang nangyayari, syempre, diba, you have your corporate level, yung pinakang top, and then you have your business level. Siguro pwede na sabing middle management, more on business line ang kanilang tawag dito, ang kanilang responsibility. Tapos you have the functional level. In a way, itong functional level, more on support sila. No? Sila yung nagpo-provide ng mga pangangailangan ng business line or ng mga business divisions. Okay? And then, syempre, dahil ito ay large corporation, of course, people, again, medyo mahirap kontrolin. Syempre, mahirap i-coordinate. Meron dyang, iba't ibang perspective, iba't iba ng motivating factors. Tapos, iba-iba, syempre, din ng goals na gusto mangyari sa buhay. But, of course, as a corporation, as a business, you have the goals and objectives of the corporation na dapat ay maging guiding maging guidance ng bawat decision maker. Okay? So, in a way, parang tawag dito, yung dine-decentralize nila yung decision making. Normally, ang magkausap na lang, edi yung top saka yung middle. Tapos ay yung middle saka yung functional or yung support. Okay? So, normally, hindi na sila yung lahatan ay nagkakausap-usap. Right? And sometimes they also they release written guidelines kung paano siya gagawin. And if may mga limitations, may mga prohibitions, or merong mga reminders, so yun, nakalagay din siya doon. And of course, kapag merong, let's say, nagpo-formulate ng plan, tapos there are certain things that they wanted to do, pero syempre kung may prohibitions na dun sa guidebook or dun sa handbook, hindi na nila pwedeng gawin. But they can make an appeal probably, but syempre meron pa ring approval sa taas. Okay? Normally, gano'n naman You have your top pababa, tapos itong si middle papunta kay support. Itong si support magagawa ng recommendations papunta kay middle. Itong si middle, syempre i-review siya, i-check, approve, can he recommend this for approval sa taas or hindi? Kung hindi, edi balik siya sa baba, gawa ka ng panibago. Kung approve siya, edi recommend niya pataas. Tapos itong si nasa top naman, edi ganun din, review, tapos i-check kung pwede bang i-approve or should they reject this or should they bring them down again para for revisions. May pwede pang baguhin, merong i-improve dun sa plan or something. So, ganun. Ganun yung nagiging process niya. Okay? Later dito, may pinakita naman sila. Wait lang. So, dito, they have 3 levels of strategy. We've already discussed this in a prior video, so hindi ko na masyadong i-discuss dito. So, again, we have yung, asan na siya? Ito. Headquarters, corporate strategy, yung pinakang top management. Tapos yung division or yung business strategy for product lines, ganyan. And then yung department or functional strategy, ito yung mga support groups like accounting, marketing, sales, production, ganyan. Okay? Tapos, with regards to the planning process, edi yun, parang sinubstitute na lang yung word na planning. For corporate strategy, then you have your corporate planning. For division strategy, business strategy, you have your business planning. And then for functional strategy, you have your functional planning. Okay? Okay. Ito may konti siyang provided na information kung ano ba yung mga inclusion with regards to the corporate planning and strategy, business planning and strategy, saka functional planning and strategy. Okay, so una muna, corporate planning and strategy. Corporate objectives are established at the top levels. Corporate planning, leading to the formulation of corporate strategy, is the process of first, deciding on the company's objectives and goals. Kasi yan yung magiging batayan ng mga decision-making. Okay? Kung supportive ba or makakatulong ba to achieve the goals and objectives. Including determination of which and how many lines of business to engage in. Secondly, acquiring resources needed to attain those objectives. And then thirdly, allocating resources among the different businesses so that the objectives are achieved. Okay? Tapos yan sa business planning naman or strategy, leading to the formulation of business strategy is the process of determining the scope of the division's activities that will satisfy a broad customer need of deciding on the division's objectives in its defined area of operations and of establishing the policies adopted to attain those objectives. Okay, strategy formulation involves selecting division objectives and goals and establishing the charter of the business. After delineating the scope of its operations vis-a-vis markets, geographical areas, and or technology. Okay. So dito, medyo more specific compared to the corporate strategy. Siguro, much more measurable. And then, more on na siya, mga financial ratios like sales margin, profit margin, ganyan, mga turnovers, returns, things like that. Okay. And of course, with regards, syempre, planning process pa naman siya. So you have your what products are we going to produce, kanina natin yan i-market, how are we going to do it, and yun na, pag the latter part na yung financials. And then lastly, you have your functional planning and strategy. The department develops a set of feasible action programs to implement division strategy. So support siya nung as a division strategy, while the division selects, in light of its objectives, the subset of programs to be executed and coordinates the action programs of the functional department. Strategy formulation involves selecting objectives and goals for each functional area. Examples ng functional areas na yon: marketing, production, finance, research, and so on. And determining the nature and sequence of actions to be taken by each area. So, ano yung magiging focus nitong bawat division na to? Bawat functional area na to. Tapos, ano yung mga actions na gagawin nila? Kumbaga, parang programs or projects. Programs are the building blocks of strategic functional plans. Okay? So obviously, these levels of strategy impinge on each other to some extent. For example, the corporation's choice of business areas overlaps the scope of division charters, and the delineation of the markets by the division can dictate at the department level the choice of strategy in the marketing function. But the distinction remains valid and useful. Kasi sometimes naman yung functions, they do not only support one division. Sometimes they can also support numerous divisions. So, ito na yung magiging focus ng discussion natin, 3-cycle system. So, pagdating dun sa planning process, merong cycle na tinatawag. Paano ba siya nangyayari? Ito yung isa. Okay, so normally, when you're meeting for tinatawag natin strategic meetings, so, the basic question being addressed is the same: what should we do? Ano na bang dapat gawin nung business for them to achieve their goals and objectives? So a detailed answer to that question is best developed by breaking it into a series of more specific questions dealt with in several meetings. So these questions include: what are the objectives and goals of our company? Parang nire-remind na, okay, ito yung guidelines natin, ito ulit yung ating dapat na ma-achieve. So paano ba natin ulit ma-achieve itong mga to? Okay? What sort of environment can we expect to operate in? May mga nagbago na ba? May mga additional competitors ba tayo? May nagbago ba sa value chain, sa suppliers, sa customers? Meron ba mga substitute products or services na, kalaban ng business natin? What businesses are we in? Ano ba yung mga products or services na pino-offer natin? May mga improvements ba? Meron bang progress? Things like that. What alternative strategies could we pursue in those businesses? What other businesses should we enter? Should we make entry through an acquisition or through our research? Essentially, mas madali pag-acquisition, right? Unless walang existing. What is the best combination of existing and new businesses to achieve corporate goals? What program should the divisions undertake? What should each division's operating budget be? Okay, pinaka-importante tayo. What should each division's operating budget be? Okay, so kasi yun nga, limited resources. So regardless of all the goals and objectives na nakaset nyo, yung mga actions na pwede nyong gawin is limited nung kung magkano lang yung available na resources, physical or financial resources. Kahit na marami kayong planong gustong gawin, kapag, hindi naman sapat yung budget, edi hindi talaga pwede siyang gawin ng business. Okay, tapos ito, kaya nagkakaroon yan ng planning process kasi sometimes you have your, meron kang various divisions and then you have your various functional areas. Lahat sila may mga gustong gawin pero sasapat ba yung resources ng company? Kasi kung hindi, then you have to, renegotiate and then renegotiate para pagkasyahin or tanungin ulit sila, kulang yung budget natin, I should either scale down, bawasan nyo yung mga activities na yan, or bawasan nyo yung budget na kailangan nyo for your specific activities. Okay, that's a reality in almost all businesses. Okay? Next. Okay, so ito na yung cycle. Bali, cycle 1, cycle 2, then you have your cycle 3 dito. Basahin ko lang, masyado maliit. So, ito yung part na to, top management ito, and then this one is the divisions, tapos itong nasa kababaan, the functional areas. Okay, so yung pinaka-top, what they do is, they state corporate objectives, tapos they call for division plans, okay? Tapos ito namang division manager, or mga different divisions, they define division charter, objectives, tapos strategies, and after doing so, they propose division goals and resource requirements. Ito yung mahalaga, resource requirements. Okay? Tapos, sasubmit niya sa top management. Ito yung si top management, i-review. Either approve, reject, or ask for revision until magkaroon na ng, for approval talaga. Approve division, objectives, and strategy. Pag na-approve na yon, edi state corporate strategy and tentative corporate and division goals. Kasi, kumbaga, dapat kasi align yan. So, check din kung naka-align ba yung division goals and objectives dun sa corporate goals and objectives. After that, edi call for division programs. Ano ba yung mga balak nyong gawin for the coming year? Okay? Or in the next few years. So, pagdating dito kay division manager, state naman niya yung division objectives and strategy. And then, after that, call for program and alternatives from the functional areas. Kasi ito yung support sila yung mga, in a way, gumagawa talaga ng bulk ng trabaho. So dito, identify program alternatives, analyze programs, and recommend the best one. Okay, kasi sila yung nakakaalam kung ano ba yung nangyayari talaga sa ibaba, kung ano yung pinagdadaanan ng mga tao, ano yung nagiging results ng operations. Sila rin yung nakakaalam kung, how does the customer base perceive yung kanilang products or services, ganyan. Okay, so kumbaga yung mga feedback nasa kanila talaga, okay? So after making the recommendations, etong si division manager, select best mix of programs. Hindi naman kasi required na isa lang, di ba, yung pipiliin. So depending on how much they think is the available resource. So they can create a mix of programs. And then, after that, they recommend programs and resource requirements through the top. Okay, tapos itong si top, set corporate and division goals, and then make tentative resource allocations in division programs. Okay, tapos after that, ito yung continuation, call for division budget. Saka pa lang. Kasi dito sa part dito, may revisions pa din naman yan kasi let's say, i-consolidate yung from all the divisions. Tapos, syempre, i-check alin dito yung mga best combinations of programs. Baka mamaya merong naiiba, hindi naka-align, or let's say, out of all the programs, medyo hindi magandang isabay for this particular year. So, merong mga ganon, right? And then, after that, saka pa lang, kapag nakapag-decide na yung top management, saka pa lang sila magko-call for division budgets. Tapos doon, syempre, alam na rin naman yung divisions, kung ano yung mga programs na na-approve ng top. So, based on what the top approved, doon nila i-base yung kanilang division budgets. Okay? So, dito, state division goals, call for department budget. So, kumbaga, inform nila din itong nasa baba, functional areas. Okay, ito yung mga na-approve natin na programs for this year. Prepare the budget. Okay? So, itong si baba, functional areas, develop your budget, submit budgets for approval. So, division manager ko-coordinate and re-review yung approved budgets from the different functional areas. Tapos kapag na-review na niya, na-check na, wala nang revision, so sasabitan niya for approval to the top. Okay? Tapos itong si top, review niya rin niya. Re-review din, ano. Tapos, of course, again, consolidate yung lahat. Kung kasya yung resource allocation, edi approve. If hindi kasya, then he might have to ask the divisions to, cut down a little bit of your resource, of your budget request, okay, or budget proposals, okay. And then, pag okay na, saka pa lang talaga i-release yung approved budgets, right? So, top management increasingly uneasy over its ability to resolve all the strategic issues implicit in the budget. Lalo na kung marami naman kasi talagang divisions, maraming functional areas, so mahirap talaga, okay, for diversified corporations. So, ayan. So, they normally ask for 5-year plans, ganyan. Pero for budgeting, normally 1 year lang yung requirement. Okay? So, merong mga companies, if they don't want too much paperwork. So, ayan, merong 1 cycle, 2 cycle, saka 3 cycle. Yung sa 1 cycle, edi budgeting, mismong top management na lang ang nagde-decide kung saan ilalagay itong mga budgets na to. 2-cycle process, so involve yung functional planning, saka yung budgeting. So, kumbaga may input pa itong functional planning. Essentially, kasi sila naman yung, di ba, yung nasa baba nga, nakakaalam kung ano talaga yung pangangailangan ng kanilang areas. 3-cycle process, edi you have your business planning, functional, and budgeting. Essentially, itong budgeting, edi ito yung nag-represent sa top. Okay? Ayan. So, if you've read the article, so meron ditong sample corporation, kung ano yung mga nangyari sa kanila, kung ano yung mga ginawa nila. Okay? So, eto. Let's go ahead dun sa 3 cycles again. So, yung first cycle serves a dual purpose to develop a tentative set of agreements between corporate and division managers. And then the second one is to provide focus for the more detailed planning in the next cycle. Di ba yun nga? Kunwari, for this year, 2021, January pa lang, di ba? 1 year of operation, right? Pero while we are implementing yung operation for 2021, we are also preparing already for 2022, okay? So, as early as January, February, March, first quarter of the year, meron na rin tayo mga sineset na goals for 2022. And then, nagsasubmit na rin tayo ng proposals ng mga programs. And then, at the latter part of the year, kapag alam na natin kung ano yung mga programs, edi yung budget naman. Di ba, if you've seen, I think they already put it on, national TV. Di ba, nire-release na agad nila yung mga pag nagre-reading ang Congress, ang Senate, about sa national budget ng Pilipinas, di ba? So, meron silang mga ganon. As early as parang kalaghatian ng taon, kailangan ata approve na yung budget for the next year. So, as early as this year, alam na natin kung aling department ng bansa ang may pinakamalaking, allocation ng resources. So, as you know, we have the education, we have national defense, we have health, we have agriculture. Yan yung normally nag-i-eat up talaga ng large portion, no? Budget natin. Although there are others, but I'm not very particular. But in corporate settings, mga private businesses, especially mga large corporations, ganun din naman. Kahit na matagal pa or malayo pa yung next year, as early as now, pinaghahandaan na talaga siya. Okay? Kasi naman, pagdating pa lang ng December, January, saka ka maghahanda. Di, masyado na siyang late. Right? So, yan. And then, for establish corporate objectives muna, na reminder, meron siyang mga pin-provide na, what do you call this? Specifics, for the corporate objectives. Tapos, again, yun nga, from the top, then you go to the division. Tapos, ito ng division naman, ayan. Etong isa dito, paggagawa naman daw ng charter. Large corporations, sometimes they do need this para, klaro, naka-black and white kung ano talaga yung process ng pagdadaanan for the approval ng mga programs and the budgets. Okay, it increases the likelihood of clear agreement between the top of executives and the division manager about the scope of his activities, and then it reduces the risk of redundant efforts or competition between divisions. Ayan. So para klaro, yung walang vague, walang assumptions, kasi nakastate talaga siya mismo dun sa charter or guidelines. Okay, and then ayan, setting corporate goals. Yung nauna kanina, objectives, and then you have your goals. Planning gap. Okay. There are certain parts of this article na medyo magandang pagbigyan ng focus. So, yun na lang yung gagawin natin din. The sum of the recommended division goals is likely to be inadequate to achieve the goals envisioned by headquarters for the entire organization. In trying to close this planning gap, corporate management has only 3 choices. So, una, it can improve division performance by pressing during the review of division recommendations for more aggressive strategies and more ambitious goals. Secondly, it can divert company resources into more promising businesses. This move may give rise to an acquisition program. And then thirdly, it can decide that the corporate goals are unrealistic and scale them down. Okay, one thing to note, ito yung planning process pa lang, Kaso over the years, meron kasi mga companies, di ba? Planning process pa lang yan, you have your implementation, and then the latter part, you have your review or evaluation, right? Large companies, normally, they do provide incentives, bonuses, tipong ganon. When a division or when a functional area or when these managers are able to achieve their goals and objectives. So, ang nangyayari, di ba, over the years, nalaman na rin naman nila na since nakatie up kasi yung incentive na matatanggap nila, what managers normally do is that they scale down or they lower their goals and objectives into something that they believe is easily achievable. Para pag na-achieve nila, syempre, they get the incentives, right? And so, over the years, yun nga, medyo mababa. Okay, yung mga sineset na goal. So, nagiging detrimental siya, for the overall goals and objectives ng business. Kasi una sa lahat, binabaan yung standards or binabaan yung goals and objectives, but then they're still providing the incentives to these managers and such. Na in a way, understandable naman siya, but then kailangan kasi magkaroon ng balance yung top saka yung middle or the other levels of management. Parang lang din sa budgeting, di ba, let's say, nag-submit ka ng budget proposal and then you already have the expectation na babawasan siya ng top kasi nga hindi sapat yung resources. Let's say, ang resources lang is 100 million. Nang i-consolidate yung pangkalahatan na budget proposals, inabot ng 120 million, diba? So, sobra ng 20 million. So, pinagsabihan itong mga divisions or functional areas, bawasan nyo. Kailangan natin mag-scale down ng hanggang 20 million. Okay? So, sometimes it's either, yung unang process kasi, syempre, kausapin mo yung mga divisions, kayo magbawas. Kung tingin nyo ay meron pa dyang pwedeng bawasan, edi bawasan nyo. After that, sinabit ulit sa top, meron pa rin natira, let's say 10 million, okay? So, in that sense, wala na, kasi nanggaling na sa division. Ito na lang setup, pwede niyang gawin is, across the board na reduction ng budget, okay? And then, in that sense, kasi, over time, edi syempre, nalalaman na rin ng mga division managers or functional managers kung ano nangyayari nga ba dun sa budgeting. So, let's say instead of proposing a budget of 10 million for one department, kasi alam nila na babawasan yung mga items pa din naman kapag nag-budget cutting or nag-cost cutting. So instead of only proposing 10 million, ginawa nilang 12 million. Para kung sakali man daw na mag-cost cut, edi 10 million. Let's say, pinakamababa na 10 million. Diba? Para in a way, hindi siya maganda kasi, overall for the business or the corporation. Hindi kasi siya nakakatulong, sa totoo lang. But, syempre, I don't know, kasi nga merong reward system for the division level. So, siguro, they could find a way to balance that. Very specific for the different businesses or corporations. Siguro we'll find a specific case tapos we'll try to come up with resolutions. Okay? So, merong mga ganong instances na hindi nakakatulong. Pero, in a way, understandable naman. Okay? Kung bakit siya nangyayari talaga. And tapos, there's something else I've seen from here. Ayan, ito. Merong isang example na binigay dito. Difference between a sound business plan and then a sound business. Okay? It's possible kasi na during the proposal process, submission of papers, di ba? You have here from functional area to middle or to division managers and then from division managers to the top management. Okay? It's possible naman talaga na habang binabasa yung proposal, it's very good. Pero later on, during implementation, hindi pala siya ganun kaganda. Doon mo lang talaga siya makikita na tapos, ang ginawa dito ng business is, diniscontinue yung business na yun and it was written off. Tapos yung question dito, poor planning. Obviously, the decision to enter the business was a mistake. But implementation of that decision and the planning done to minimize the investment exposure without compromising the chances for success were probably sound. So there are two important lessons here about the process of corporate planning. So yung una, strategic decisions like this divestment are not made in accordance with some precise timetable. Hindi yung iintayin mo pa na makita mo na lost talaga yung result ng division. If you've seen already yung tipong red flags, meron namang mga ganyan sa business. Red flags, ganyan. So, they are made whenever top management reaches a conclusion that interference in a unit's affairs is necessary. Okay? In a way, normally, mga nasa top management naman sila yung experience na marami nang naranasan, marami nang nakitang businesses na nag-fail and nag-succeed. So, either, they could see something in a particular venture na hindi maganda. Okay? At ang second, formal planning procedures are not intended to facilitate strategic decisions such as this, if only because a division manager rarely recommends the disposal of his operation. Of course, kung ikaw yung, kung ikaw yung division manager, ikaw yung nag-support nung recommendation ng yung functional areas, tapos you're also recommended it to the top, syempre gusto mong patunayan na maganda tong business na to. Okay? Pero again, since probably inexperience, so hindi mo alam yung mga nagiging problems or possible issues with that investment, so, hindi mo naman siya, kaya, hindi mo siya, normally, a division manager would not recommend it to be discontinued. Kasi, shoulder mo yung responsibility na pag ito hindi nag-work out, kasi parang kasalanan mo or parang, diba, ikaw yung magiging held accountable and of course, parang kahihiyan na din. Okay? So normally, they don't, recommend for the discontinue one. So it would be from the top. Okay? Yung decision to discontinue a business division would be coming from the top normally. Okay? Approving a division strategic plan but closing the unit 3 months later is not hypocrisy or poor planning. The act is much more merciful than the slow strangulation of providing inadequate resources. So, mas maganda kasi yung, early on, matigil na yung operation kaysa naman mag-eat up pa siya nung resources ng business, which would be more detrimental to the business, di ba? In the meantime, until the act falls, division management must prove the viability of its business. For its part, headquarters must not fail to recognize the difference between a sound plan and a sound business. Kasi minsan, not all sound plans can become sound businesses, di ba? And then you have your second cycle naman. Ito naman from division to the functional areas. Okay? Sila naman yung mag-uusap dito. Reach a tentative agreement on the action programs to be implemented over the next few years. Okay? And then, medyo parang kwento, itong articles na nandito. So, ayan. Formalized programming. Okay, let's read this one. In a typical manufacturing enterprise, there are 4 types of programs to be developed. Existing revenue programs, development of a set of marketing programs for the existing product lines, new revenue programs, development and introduction of new product. Manufacturing programs, sales forecasts by product line are furnished to the manufacturing function, which develops the programs necessary to meet the revenue goals in the marketing programs. Okay, so kumbaga may coordination between the functional areas and the division. Support programs, managers of other functional support activities such as administration may also get involved in the development of programs. Okay? So, ayan. Tapos yung third cycle naman, the formal planning process needs little explanation. Pero in a way, kumbaga, let's say, general points worth making here. Resource allocation is almost always a very informal, unstructured process heavily dependent on the skill in advocacy and political weight of the executives concerned. Since it is also a continuous process, by the end of the second cycle, the risk of serious mismatch between programs and resources is unlikely if headquarters or division communications have been good. Okay, so kumbaga proper communication nga between the divisions, right? Before siya makarating sa top. Kasi normally top yung nag-a-approve ng budget or nung allocated resources. Okay? Ito yung kasi diba, you have your proposals, right? But then there are people who would appeal for, additional funding. And sometimes it would depend on the top management and how they're going to handle that. Would they be firm in saying no? Or would they be tempted to say yes kapag sila ay, meron kasing tao na tawag dito, magaling mag-persuade, tapos meron namang tao na talagang hindi mo mape-persuade no matter how good you are. So, it would be a battle between those two types of persons. Pero again, depende na sa kanila how they're going to handle that. Although programs may have an expected life of several years, yung allocation of resources normally for 1 year lang. And then whether top management will make a commitment to meet next year's needs will depend on the scale and timing flexibility of the program in the competition for resources. Normally, hindi man talaga siya bibigyan ng agad-agad, allocatean mo agad siya ng pangbuong 5 years niya. Kasi pwede pa siya magamit ng other division. So normally just 1 year talaga yung budgeting. Okay, tapos after 1 year, syempre may panibagong resources yung company from the sales during that year or from the collection during that year, na yun yung magiging gagamitin naman for the following year, right? Or depending na rin on the, financing activities of the business, okay? Although resource allocation to projects is based on a perception of the desirability of each, corporate planning attempts to ensure that each also fits into a portfolio of undertakings. Yun nga, kasi nga, naka-align dapat siya sa corporate goals and objectives. Saka yung, of course, meron namang, meeting, meron namang nakaset na gustong gawin talaga yung normally top management. And so, if something or if a program does not support or cannot be incorporated in a particular plan, normally, hindi sila sinasama talaga. Okay? Either, deferred muna, siguro next time. Okay, mga ganon. Okay, so ito yung last part, raising the odds. The formal long-range planning process in large diversified corporations is both simple and complex. Simple kasi normally if you have your written handbook, yun na yun. Pero complex kasi minsan you have all these people saying different things and you have to negotiate, you have to communicate. I think the communication yun yung complex doon normally, Conceptually, the process is very simple, a progressive narrowing of strategic choices, although it may involve many steps along that path. Operationally, the process is far more complex than the activities we have described because the formal part of the process is only the tip of the iceberg. Good strategic planning can take place only when qualified managers engage in creative thinking, and creativity by definition cannot be produced on a schedule. Meron mga ganun. Sometimes you're already implementing a project or a program, tapos in the middle of all that, maybe you sometimes you get an idea on how to better improve the situation. So sometimes you really have to be flexible in incorporating a plan or in implementing a plan. There is little doubt that formalizing the planning process is worthwhile. It ensures that managers at all levels will devote some time to strategic thinking, and it guarantees each of them and audience for his ideas. While formal strategic planning cannot guarantee good ideas, it can increase the odds sufficiently to yield a handsome payoff. Okay? I think I missed a certain section dito. Meron yung isang section dyan na nga sinasabi, when you present your proposals to the top management, normally you also provide your reasoning for choosing that particular program, and then you also provide a list of the alternatives that you've also thought of. Okay, but in the end, why i-state mo din yung reasoning mo, why eventually ang napili mong i-propose or i-recommend is this particular one. Kumbaga, communication din, para mas madali siyang maintindihan ng nasa top. And secondly, para alam ng nasa top na you really thought things through. Pinag-isipan mo talaga, and you use critical thinking, strategic thinking in making the proposal. Okay? So, yun. Ito, first part pa lang naman kasi strategic planning pa lang. Again, you have your implementation and you have your evaluation pa at the end. And sometimes there is, what do you call that? Yung changing certain plans. Ganyan. Okay, so that's it for this one, I think. Thanks and bye.